Welcome to episode 2 of Art Finds a Way Conversations with Expressive Arts Therapists. Well, today's guest is amazing. Dr. Krystal Demaine, PhD, grew up in the small coastal community of Rockport, Massachusetts, with her mother, father, and 2 sisters. As a young girl, she was inspired by her creative surroundings with her parents as owners of the iconic Bearskin Neck Country Store, and her father was an accomplished bass player. She was drawn to creative pursuits with music and art, which became her life's passion. Her roots of training in music therapy, neuroscience, creative writing, photography, expressive arts, and yoga led her to 20 years of private practice working across the lifespan with neurodiverse populations. Her roots of training in music therapy, neuroscience, creative writing, photography, expressive arts, and yoga led her to 20 years of private practice working across the lifespan with neurodiverse populations, mental health, and grief support. She earned a BM in music therapy from Berklee College of Music, her master's in counseling psychology from Cambridge College, and a PhD in expressive therapies from Lesley University. She is a board-certified music therapist, registered expressive arts therapist, registered yoga teacher with advanced training in neurologic music therapy, performance wellness, integrative medicine for mental health, trauma-sensitive heart math, and is a listening hour practitioner. She has written numerous peer-reviewed articles and book chapters and presented her work across the globe. She is currently full professor of expressive therapies at Endicott College in Beverly, Mass., overseeing the art therapy and expressive arts therapy undergraduate degree programs and coordinating the biennial Endicott College Expressive Therapy Symposium. She also teaches part-time at both Lesley University in the Psychology and Applied Therapies Department and at Salem State University in the Music and Dance Department. Dr. Demaine lives in Beverly, Mass. With her bright young son. Her most recent book, The Roots and Rhythm of the Heart, shares her philosophy of working with heart, healing, and the arts. Dr. Demaine is available for talks, workshops, and writing projects. Krystal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. I'm happy to be here.
Krystal, what are some of the different hats that you wear?
That's a great question. So professionally speaking, some of the hats I wear are music therapist, expressive arts therapist. Sometimes I'm a yoga teacher. Right now, my primary work is a writer. I'm currently writing a second book, but my main role, I would say, aside from being a mother, which is a different practice, is a professor of expressive therapies at Endicott College.
Self-care is such an important topic. And so what is involved in your self-care with yoga or meditation or music?
So I think that these elements are part of my everyday life. Um, as a person who's a practicing therapist and musician and artist, in lots of different art forms, these are kind of like my natural tools for living. I go to writing, I go to music, and when I don't have these elements in my life, that's when I feel a little bit off. When I forget about playing music, or I'm not playing, or sometimes not teaching in the summer when I'm off for the semester and I'm not making as much art or playing as much music with people, it just feels like I'm not taking care of myself. And so the using the arts as part of my practice is just a way of living for me, and it is what helps me take care.
So
Movement, music.
in a way, we have that advantage of self-awareness to know when, something's lacking and to make a change. But probably a lot of our clients don't get those, messages, and that's where they might move more into crisis, right?
Yeah, I think so. And where do we build those tools for knowing how to manage when we're feeling a little bit dysregulated or out of touch or maybe a little bit sad or depressed or anxious. And how do we know what to go to?
What's a simple yoga and breathwork routine that a clod like me could start doing every day?
Well, one of the tools that I actually recommend in my book is breathing to music of a slower tempo. And so I actually have a list of songs in there that are between 40 and 60 beats per minute. So finding music of a slower tempo that will help naturally, because we naturally entrain to music, and our breath is something that we can use to control that the rest of our physiology will follow and kind of grab onto, is breath. So if we can practice breathing, inhaling and exhaling with slower music, our body will in turn follow that breath cue and help reduce heart rate, reduce anxiety, release tension. And then we can just do those little yoga cues like releasing the jaw and maybe putting your hand over your heart, one hand over your belly, and just becoming more attuned into that somatic movement of the body with that gentle inhale and exhale. And I think doing that with music is a great place to start.
Yeah, I love your creative exercises in the book. And the book is called The Roots and Rhythm of the Heart, Our Musical Connection to Identity, Spirit, and Lineage. And it's a beautiful book. How did you find the time to write it? And what was your process for completing it?
Oh, thank you for asking that. I actually um, in 2018 was getting ready to apply for a sabbatical, um, and I was intending to write a book on music therapy during that sabbatical, which was scheduled for 2020. And so when you're in academia, you get a sabbatical every 7 years. You can apply for one, and that allows you time to take a semester off from teaching, or sometimes a full year off of teaching, and still get paid to do a substantial project. And so I proposed to write a book. And during that time and getting ready to put in for my sabbatical, my father suddenly became sick and died. And this really impacted the way that I ended up writing this book. Like I mentioned, I intended to write a book on my music therapy experiences with the heartbeat rhythm. But if you go to chapter 1 in the book, I talk about listening to my father's heart when he was unexpectedly on a hospital bed and on life support. And my father was my musical inspiration. He's the one who filled my childhood home with music. I followed in his footsteps. We both went to Berklee College of Music, him in the 70s, me in the 90s. So the book kind of slowed in its process and shifted gears, and I was able to publish it in 2022. And uh, during the journey of that time, it's not only about the field of music therapy and the work that I do, but it's also about my own grief journey and looking a little bit at my lineage and a bit at my connection to the energy and spirit of music within my own life.
Hmm. I love how you dedicated the book to your dad, and you can just tell right throughout the whole book how it's really kind of a love letter of sorts, to your dad, and that's inspirational.
Mhm.
Oddly enough, it kind of reminded me of how I approach project management and in a kind of a creative way, like of starting by identifying the emotional spark of the project and then allowing that spark to kind of be the momentum for the project. So, how did you kind of tap into the love for your dad, maybe as that heartbeat or the driving momentum for the book?
Yeah, so I had been working on an approach with clients in music therapy, and it kind of came from my yoga practice of just listening to the heart. And I talk a little bit about how when I would become dysregulated or overwhelmed on my own with just general life stuff and feel like I can't do this mentality, I would practice some somatic breathing so I would do breathing with movement. And that's, I think, one of the first creative activities in the book, is stretching up to the sky and bringing energy into the heart, and stretching outward and bringing energy into the heart, and really tuning into that beat. And I call that heartbeat rhythm our own internal rhythm. Is it's our pulse, it's our life force. It's like our chi, as we would say in Chinese medicine. But not only that, it's when I started out as a young music therapy student, at Berkeley, we had a professor called Steve Wilkes who taught percussion for music therapy. And in that class, we had like 5 students. And in Steve Wilkes' class, we sat, and the class, I think, took place in his office. And we sat around a gathering drum, a low drum on the floor, a big round low frame drum on the floor. And we all had these natural fiber mallets. And we're holding these mallets in our hand, me and these 4 other students, and Steve Wilkes saying, play this. This is the pulse. This is the heartbeat rhythm. And so we're playing like this steady, kind of slow, probably like 50 beats per minute tempo of thud, thud. And Steve Wilkes, our professor, says, this is the first rhythm instructed. And me, I'm like 19, and I'm like really like this analytical, super excited student. And I'm like, where are they instructing it? Are they instructing this in Latin America? Are they instructing it in the Middle East? Where do they teach this rhythm, right? And so I'm thinking, he's thinking, this is the first rhythm instructed. And then I get into my music therapy practice, and one of the first clients I had was a young first grade girl at her school. I was assigned to her IEP, and she was very physically limited, had a cognitive disorder. She was totally blind and had kind of spasticity in her hands. But one of the first things we did was I played the heartbeat rhythm with her. And it came from the mother of this client. So this is one of my very first clients. And I'm like 21 years old, just started my private practice. And the mother said, when my child was in utero, we didn't know if she was going to survive. So my brother recorded her fetal heartbeat, and it was her first music.
Hmm.
That heartbeat was her first music. We didn't know if she would survive. And so I was thinking, in that first music therapy session, my first client, that's what Steve Wilkes meant. The first rhythm instructed. Okay, I get it. This is the rhythm of our lives. This is our music. And it was so basic. And then fast forward to 2019, when my father's dying, and I'm listening to his heartbeat, and I have my head on his chest. That was my dad's music. That was the last music he played in a
Hmm.
life of being a musician. So it kind of like came to this space of how the importance of the heartbeat to me, and how I wanted to make that kind of like the center focus of this book.
Love that. I also love
Yeah.
how you included 10 creative exercises in the book that the reader can do. And you even included specific songs and pieces of music, from David Bowie to Foo Fighters. So, how did you select
Mm.
those songs, and why is it important to have the song that's at the right tempo or speed?
Great questions. So you're right, I selected a song to go along with each chapter, kind of like recommended listening to reflect on after you read the chapter. I kind of see it as a soundtrack for the book. Um, I don't have rights for a soundtrack, but I just kind of like gave a recommendation for a suggested listening, because I think it sort of gives a framework to what each chapter was about, right?
Right.
So the first chapter is called A Call to the Heart, and then This Is the Call is the first song, the Foo Fighters. I feel like that was a song that gets me amped up. And so I wanted to be like, okay, I read this and it was solemn. This first chapter was solemn, it was sad. But now I'm ready to get into more. Like, this is the calling. Okay. And then I have, you mentioned the David Bowie. I think I have Let's Dance in there. And that song just reminds me of such great imagery. And I think David Bowie is one of the greatest musicians of our lifetime. And I feel that in that chapter I talk about the heart as a dancing rhythm, and I talk about my interview with Stan Strickland, who gave performances with his heartbeat and danced on stage and played saxophone on stage to his heartbeat rhythm. And so I thought that song was fitting. So I think this song is sort of a reflection or homage to that chapter in the book. And in the 10 activities do the same, where they kind of allow you to dig a little bit deeper into what the chapter was about. And um, the the art activities are all very expressive arts in nature, borrowing from a variety of different modalities, like you mentioned, expressive and creative writing and music and movement, visual arts. So I wanted to borrow from my background as an expressive arts therapist and bringing in a lot of those different elements in different languages for people to do some meaning making of the chapters in their own personal way.
Yeah, and that's wonderful that you give them the opportunity to experience those things throughout the book on their own. I think
Thanks.
my favorite thing about your book is your personal stories. And one of the stories
Mm.
was about your takeaway from the movie The Dark Crystal. And so
Mhm.
please tell us about
Yeah.
what you call the gemstones of life and how special
Mhm.
moments in life can sometimes be clouded like a clouded crystal as well.
Mm. Yeah. So this is so great because um, I've been using this term. These are precious gemstones, right? These are precious gemstones in life. And sometimes in class when I'm teaching students about how to write in APA format, I take out all of my Journal of Music Therapy journals, the JMT, and these brown academic journals, and I say these are precious gemstones. This is the literature of the field, and I show the students like this is such valuable information in our life, right? And sometimes we can have such valuable information, and we cannot even know what's there. Sometimes it can be um, fractured, right? Sometimes, like in the movie The Dark Crystal, where they had this very special stone, but then it became shattered. And what is the value? Is something within you, or is it something you have to seek out? So maybe it's just a fleeting moment, but it's what we take from it. And we're gonna have good stuff and bad stuff in our lives always. That's just how it is. But it's how do we navigate it? How do we get through it? How do we find that baseline and walk through the middle of the fire without getting burned, or not get too attracted to the water or too attracted to the fire, and just stay in the middle of things? So we
Hmm.
have to realize that even those gemstones can be beautiful, they might be a little bit cloudy. And I actually have a dark crystal on my mantle, and it's a piece of quartz that's like cloudy gray, and I have it there as a symbol of just as what you're talking about in this chapter. Um, is there's I actually did a thing in this book too of I went to a practitioner who laid crystals all over my body, just to see what that felt like, just because it was part of my research in exploring for this book. But just the the concept, metaphorically speaking, of um these things that we value in life, but sometimes they can look good, but maybe they won't give us what we need. Or so how do we find where the value is in these things? I think
Hmm.
is a lesson I'm always working on.
So even when you're relaxing to a movie, you're kind of still at work.
I think so. That's what I say to people, because they're like, "You're a professor, you have the summer off." And I said, "Well, I think I'm always researching." I
Yeah.
think we are, especially as music therapists, we're always practicing. Well, you're just kicking back playing the guitar. Well, I'm actually working on some songs for to with my client, or you're just sketching up an idea. I was on the iPad sketching up yeah, this is all part of the practice. And I'm
Hmm.
teaching my guitar class next semester, and so I'm like practicing all these 2 and 3 chord songs to help the students learn. I'm like, this is part of what we do in this field, is we're always in practice. And I just am watching, like you said, watching movies. We're writing down quotes that maybe we can use, or reading a book where we're getting more information. So it's the way we integrate it into our lives. I think it's always Like it's a practice. It's part of the process. And I think many music therapists find that the authenticity in life and work is very connected. There's like a seamless thread between the two things, that we kind of like are who we are, and we're the same way in our practice,
Hmm.
because it becomes part of our life.
I wonder if that's a true test of discovering our real purpose, and our mission is that
Mm.
you have that carryover. You see everything through
Yeah,
that
that's
lens.
mhm. Yeah, in the concept of it not feeling like work, where it's just, this is just how I live and breathe,
Hmm.
right?
Some of these research articles are very dry too. So how can you still get stuff out of some of the articles that are on the kind of dry side?
Yeah, this is a really good question, because one of the things that I invite students to do is to find well-written articles. Um, some and what makes a well-written article? Is it compelling? Is it, wow, that research, it was really compelling. Some, I think the best articles are written concisely. A manuscript is usually submitted, it's about 25 pages. And, some articles are shorter, but where is the heart of it? I think looking at the method section in an article gives the heart of what people are doing. And then you can just like scan over the results. But I think if it's well carried out research and the methodology looks good, and maybe you could try it on your own, replicate it. I think that's where the heart of research is, and how we're doing things.
Hmm. One of the creative exercises in the book is to create a musical life review. So
Mhm.
would you describe that and tell us some of the benefits? And I need to hear about that first album that you ever got, Going Quackers by Donald Duck.
Awesome. Yes, Going Quackers by Donald Duck. So the musical life review is something I was introduced to by Karen Wax when I was a student at Berkeley. And it kind of is something that I've paid it forward with my students, where I ask my students to develop the soundtrack of their lives, and to look back at the first music in their life, the earliest music, and how it impacted them, and begin building a soundtrack of songs that reflect on memories and experiences in our lives. And then I ask students to present this to the class. It's our way of getting to know the student. It's a way of the student being able to connect with many of the intrinsic qualities in music, which are to stir emotion, stimulate a memory, find connection to others. So in doing this musical life review, I gave an example in the book of my own musical life review. And one of my earliest musical memories was with the first record player that my parents bought me, which was in a beige plastic hard shell case. And I remember it was like almost like a square shaped briefcase. And I would walk up and down Bearskin Neck in Rockport, where my parents owned a gift shop. And I would be like, I felt so cool with that record album, with that record case. But one of the first songs I remember playing on it was Going Quackers, the album Going Quackers, by Donald Duck and Friends. And yeah, so that's the first song I think of, and then I go, then I begin to think about, okay, then the music I listened to in my dad's record collection. And then when I went to camp when I was 8 years old, and all these memories start to spark. And I think that the musical life review, we see it utilized a lot in end of life care, where we invite our clients to begin to catalog the music that's impacted them. Um, Karen Wax and Donna Chadwick took this even further in developing the an end of life music, the musical living will, where
Hmm.
you can actually like select the music that you would want played for you, maybe at your funeral, or while you're in the hospital, or end of life, maybe when you're in hospice. So you can kind of pre-select that music that invigorates you, that empowers you, that makes, that elicits happiness, or sadness, or quietness, or something like this. So I think that This musical life review for me is on a cassette tape still. I need to digitize it, but it's something I'll share with my son, and maybe he'll share with his kids, and they'll say, "This was my mom's music. This was my grandmother's music,
Hmm.
and this is what she listened to." And I think I encourage everybody to explore the music that's impacted their lives and create that soundtrack. This is my background. If my life is a movie, this is the soundtrack.
Hmm. I love that. You reminded
Mhm.
me of the author, Rabbi Steve Leader, and
Mm,
I should grab this book one second. I s- I saw this guy being interviewed on like a Today Show kind of thing, and there was so many ideas that I was just bowled over with. And
mm,
the book is called "For You When I Am Gone: 12 Essential Questions to Tell a Life Story," and it talks about that living will. Um,
mm.
but so beautifully done. And so I just that came up too. That he talked a lot
Yes.
about, one of the things he said was, the fact that I was born in 1952 is a fact about me,
Mhm,
but the fact, that I used to go, on a canoe when my parents were arguing, and to find solace in that and his experience of being with nature, that was a truth
mhm,
about him. So comparing what a truth is about you, versus a fact, and that when you pass, you have the focus is all these physical things that you have to, who gets what. But
mhm.
by writing this life statement of what you're really about is even more powerful to give to the next generation.
It's excellent, and it's completely related too, and it really speaks to the idea of, again, Scott, we're always doing research. We're saying like, okay, maybe how can this inform my life and inform my practice? And especially, we're all going to need to explore what a will is,
Yep.
and to have this as at, as a practice and knowledge more for better working with our clients
Hmm.
too. Mhm.
Well, I've got a couple more questions. I don't want to take your whole day, but this is really fascinating. I'm really enjoying this. And of course, our
Great.
listeners are going to get so much out of this as well already. I'm always interested in the concept of serving the inner child within therapy. What are some of the things that build resilience and health for the inner child in terms of expressive arts therapy?
Mm. I think for children, especially who might have gone through, I mean, everybody experiences different levels of trauma, but I think the arts are key here. So one thing I've learned from doing my trauma trainings is that we need to bring multi-sensory experiences to children. We need to bring multi-sensory experiences for better regulation in the body. I think if we can make art in groups with kids, we can offer opportunities for coherence with others. And because the arts are intrinsically offer a multi-sensory experience, we can draw upon any of these forms: creative and expressive writing, drawing, painting, movement, dance, music making. And then one thing can lead to another. And then there's other art forms too. There's photography, there's walking in nature. There's other sensory experiences with smell and touch and sound, if you want to look at it in smaller increments of elements. But I think inviting opportunities to help people become more aware of the accessibility of the arts on any level. We don't need a box of paints. We can go and build an assemblage of seashells and stones on the outside on the beach, or sticks, or we can build forts in the woods. And this offers that opportunity for exploring. And every child is different. Children are going to be more auditory or more tactile or more physical, depending on that child's needs. You can kind of, I mean, us as therapists can look at a child and be like, yep, they really will get a lot of input with physical movement, or that child is a little bit more contemplative. They're going to do something they'll sit quietly. Or that child will do really great with digital design or audio design. But I think that having the arts and offering that multi-sensory experience to tap into soothing the central nervous system is what's going to be key in bringing that resilience. for
Mm.
people. And I think we see that all over the world too.
One thing I love about expressive arts therapy and the training that we get often is that it seems like they start by you as a musician, if you're a music therapist, and your experience first of being a musician and experiencing music, almost like taking on the experience of the client first. So, do
Mm.
you think this is something that really separates kind of more like talk therapy versus the expressive arts therapy? Is that focus on experiencing it first?
Mm. Interesting. So I think when when we um, are in working with the arts, I feel like there's different ways of doing it. We can be directive and we can be non-directive, right? We can invite people into a room with all these art supplies and dancing scarves and stretch bands and drums and just see what happens, right? Or we can sit down across from our therapist in two chairs, and our therapist, we can sometimes look at each other and we don't know where to begin, you
Hmm.
know? So I think that maybe with the arts, we have a lot of different opportunities and we have a lot of different experiences we can explore. Um, I, we can be directive, we can be non-directive, we can allow the client to lead the flow, we can adopt myriad of different psychological approaches. We can do behavioral music therapy or CBT, expressive arts therapy, or we could do Gestalt art therapy. There's a lot of different things that we can call upon in different approaches, and we don't even need to per se label them. Um, we're unless we're like very precisely trained in one area and that's the only tool that we use. But I find that most people in our field are quite eclectic in their approaches and have a lot of different experiences. And at least when I was a student, we were required to do 5 practicum with 5 different populations, and we were required to have knowledge of working in medical settings and special education, psychiatric, mental health, community-based. And so it's like we we have this breadth of knowledge, and coming in at music therapy as our foundation, both me and you, Scott, have this like very special skill as musicians. We have this very special skill. And music therapy is still the only field in all the arts therapies where you can become board certified with a bachelor's degree.
Right.
And granted, it's like a 5-year program because of that post undergraduate clinical training internship that's 1,040 hours. But this skill as a core musician is really unique. And there are undergraduate art therapy programs and expressive art. I teach in them. And they're building those studio-based practices, but it is at the graduate levels, we're often seeing that mental health licensure component. It's not so with music therapy. Um, so I think if we have people coming in these different art forms, that lens that you come in with your bachelor's degree might be your root or your starting point. But I think that we kind of naturally see that the other arts can inform each other, and that's where the field of expressive arts therapy was born in the 1970s, where it really looked at, well, if I'm painting, I'm moving, and then that movement actually tells a story. And then I bring it over to the drum and I add that dimension of sound within that story. And so that's where we naturally see it happen. And music is poetry, right?
Mm.
Music is a story. It's there.
And as I think the single thing that is most rewarding to me of being a music therapist is having learned all those musical skills, like having good time and all the things that go with musicianship, because you can use that to help empower your client. Because I know how to have good time, it makes me allow for time when the patients or the clients don't have good time and they don't have good, quote unquote, correct musical skills. So I'm adapting all the time because I have those skills. So it's a way for me to
Mhm.
engage as a trained musician, but with untrained folks and still have musical moments.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting, working with untrained people, and that's where music therapy is so key, is just we have these really great music skills.
Right.
Um, and we don't need our And we don't need our clients to play music.
Right.
We're just bringing them into the space and seeing what evolves.
Hmm.
And it's not about learning to play music, it's about working on all these skill areas with these clients, whether it be emotional expression or speech development. We are in music therapy is really special. And I know I'm really biased because that's my background, but we work with so many different populations and in so many different approaches. So it's pretty amazing. And it
Hmm.
has the most robust amount of research among all of the arts therapies right now too. So I think that there's something to be said for that with music.
Hmm. Um, have you had any experience with transcendental meditation?
I'm familiar with it, but not personally experienced.
What is the type of meditation that you use?
I would say that I do mostly mindful meditation practices. So tuning into the environment from a sensory-based perspective. So I have done training with Tara Brach, who's a psychotherapist and Buddhist meditation instructor. And, um, I have my yoga teacher training, so I'm a registered yoga teacher. So I think that I come in from tuning into the smells, the sounds, what do you hear? Um, I oftentimes will bring my students into nature and we will just sit there and close our eyes or keep our eyes open and say, what do we notice with our eyes? Move our eyes around. So it's just tuning into the present moment. I would say from a sensory perspective is more the way that I practice, but there are a lot of different um, mindfulness-based practices, and my approach is on presence.
Where can people go to learn more about what you do, and how can they get your book, The Roots and Rhythm of the Heart, Our Musical Connection to Identity, Spirit, and Lineage?
One place you could go is my website. It is www.krystaldemaine.com. Another place and where you can get my book is really anywhere online. Target sells it, Amazon sells it, Walmart sells it, and it's available on the library databases. So like Hoopla and Libby, EBSCO has it. So you can download it for free on the library databases for I think it's a rental for a couple weeks or something, or you can buy it online.
And here's the book here. Well, congratulations on the book. And can you give us a sneak peek on book number two?
I sure can. So I'm co-authoring book number 2 with one of my friends called Dr. Tamar Einstein from Israel. And our book is being published by Routledge Publishers, and it's on expressive and transformative writing. So basically on therapeutic writing.
Hmm.
And so it will offer a lot of different writing exercises for people to engage in, and it is grounded in the field of expressive arts therapy. So using a variety of arts-based prompts to stimulate writing ideas.
Well, this has been a great treat to speak with you, Krystal. I wish we could do this all day. What is the most meaningful benefit of expressive arts therapy for your clients?
Hmm. The most meaningful benefit, I think, is bringing engagement and excitement to life, validity through the arts, and bringing somebody back to home base and coming back to who they are. So the arts allowing us to explore who we are, come back to ourselves when we're maybe feeling a little bit lost, and to be able to have more tools in our life for growing and living and expressing.
Great. Beautiful. Krystal, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you, Scott.